not launched yet.
I am Lil.
And I'm Fitz.
And you're listening to the first Not Once for Yes episode of 2017. Hope you had a good Christmas and that this podcast maybe brightens up an otherwise rather grim and grey January day. Got some new stuff on the podcast today with our Paranormal Postcards segment. But first, for the Paranormal Radar this month, we want to talk about something I got for Christmas, actually.
Yes, Lil got a nice stock of paranormal literature for Christmas.
I did.
But one thing that really stood out was House of Fire and Whispers, Investigating the Seattle Demon House by Jenny Ashford and Steve Mera.
Which was so good, I read it twice and then made Fitz read it.
I've read it 1.5 times so
One
far.
and a half.
I'm working on twice.
Poor show, chap, poor show. Basically, you might have heard of this house if you're a bit of a paranormal junkie like me. The Seattle Demon House possibly rings some bells. It's also known, though, as the Washington State Poltergeist House, which I think is possibly a bit more of an appropriate title for the case. It was made famous by a certain ghost hunting TV show in a rather controversial episode, but the story behind it is just so much more than that. I mean, this is, I think, one of the most active and certainly one of the best documented poltergeist cases of our time.
It is absolutely fascinating. And obviously, the TV show came in, and there was also several ghost hunting groups, as well as the Manchester's Association of Paranormal Investigation and Training and their sub-branch, the Scientific Establishment of Parapsychology.
Indeed. I think it's the other way around, though. I think the Manchester is a branch of the Scientific Establishment of Parapsychology.
All slap my wrists.
Oh, no. Okay. It's possibly me that's wrong. Whichever way around it is, these guys are pretty serious. One of their taglines, if you go onto their website, is specialists in confidential investigation and research. Now, these are not the kind of people that trot off and sort of investigate like famously haunted mansions and things like that. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's just not these guys' normal line of work. So this book is basically what happened when the homeowner of this very famous poltergeist house got these parapsychologists from the UK to go out to Seattle and document what was going on.
And according to the book, it took a bit of convincing. It's not the sort of thing they normally investigate. They tend to do sort of offices and council buildings and other things that aren't residential. So it really took a bit of convincing for them to come out and see this place. And like Lil was saying, they're really quite serious about the way they investigate. It's not like they turn up for a night, sort of shout and say, show yourself, and knock on the walls and then disappear.
No, I think they were living there.
They lived there for, I think it was a couple of weeks. They came back again and did another couple of weeks. So I think there was about 4 weeks in total. They were there. I'm
not sure, but they were living, they were sleeping in the house, they were eating in the house, they were properly invested in this case. But to tell you a little bit more about the case, I mean, this is kind of every paranormal enthusiast's dream. When you think of famous poltergeist cases, places like Enfield and like something like Amityville, and it's probably not just me. And I've always wondered how different would those cases have been if they had the technology that we now have, the readily available technology that we have today. And this is basically, that's what this case has given us. That's exactly what's happened. We've got an incredibly active house with some truly extraordinary activity going on, but it's been documented that the tenant, Keith Linder, has had the forethought and presence of mind and quite frankly balls, because this is scary stuff. I'm not sure I'd want to be documenting it, but he did, and I think has done a great service. Really, he's installed all sorts of security systems and video cameras around the house, and has just been documenting it from day one, which is just incredible.
Yeah, they've caught some amazing things. Although when I say caught, a lot of the time, the instances seem to happen. It's like they're toying with them.
Yeah.
They'll see a new thing like a pressure sensor or a motion sensor, and as soon as they've figured out what it is, they know how to get round it and then don't trigger it again. Although there's a lot of sort of camera captures where you're not actually capturing a lot of the time what's happening, but the motion sensor's triggered, and as soon as it's triggered, the thing's already happened. It's almost like what's happening is instantaneous. And again, that's a lot of what happens in the book. They're saying there's a few things where something's moved, and to have got from one position to the position where it's in, it would have had to have passed all three of them, and it would have taken time to do so. And yet, literally, they'll have looked, seen it in one place, seen it in the other, and it wouldn't have had time to get there.
No, but I mean, it's even weirder than that. Some of the stuff going on in the house was appearing, objects that didn't belong to the homeowner, literally appearing like children's toys when he didn't have any children. Things that he'd never seen before, just like apparating somehow in the house. And the other side of that was that things would go missing, like his wallet, literally just never to be seen again.
I think it's one of the last lines in the book where it's one of the first lines in the book when it says his wallet disappeared, and then one of the last lines it said, and his wallet has still never reappeared.
No, some of the things did reappear though. Some things went missing for a long time and then reappeared, sometimes in a burned state. And there was a lot of fire things, quite scary actually, things just setting themselves on fire, spontaneously combusting, quite dangerously in some cases.
Yes, and I think one of the incidents was a poster, and judging from the TV show, it was a Final Fantasy poster. Good man, Keith. Again, geek credentials showing through. But yeah, also there was a few Bibles, I think. Mm-hmm. Once they woke up in the middle of the night and there was a Bible on fire outside his bedroom door, which was sort of very strange.
Oh, terrifying.
And the investigators were really struggling to work out how it was done because of the pattern of the burn in the Bible. It wasn't replicable in such a way with sort of matches or anything. I think the closest they got was to sort of have a heat stripper or something,
like a blowtorch type deal.
Yeah, something sort of fairly far away to make it crumble. And
basically they could not. They tried with some pages from one of the affected books, and they could not recreate it by just setting a naked flame to the pages, which is really interesting. There was also a lot of writing on the walls going on that they couldn't figure out. And I believe, it doesn't come up in the book that they got samples analysed of that, but maybe that's something for the future. So try and get those analysed, see what it's actually made of, because I know Keith tried to paint over them and it just kept bleeding through, which is weird.
That's possibly if you look at the pictures, because I think he's got quite a light paint, and what was drawn on the walls was in sort of a black colour. So you would tend to find, if you've done a lot of decorating, that when you first put paint on, it might look like it's covered it, and then as it dries, it sort of shows through. So that might not be paranormal. But yeah, I'm not saying it isn't paranormal. I'm just saying
it can happen.
It can happen.
It can happen naturally. But there was a lot of stuff in the house that absolutely, definitely, under no circumstances could have happened naturally.
Oh no, there was a plant that came out of its pot, that literally came up
levitated
and out of its pot and fell over. Loads of EVPs.
Well, the interesting thing about the EVPs, I thought, was a lot of them they didn't seem to be responding to the investigators' questions. They were more commenting on the investigators' activity in real time. So the investigators might be chatting between themselves, and you'd get this EVP in the background talking about what they were doing, like he's got that camera, or they'd be saying, I can't find that camera, and the EVP would say, oh, it's in the bathroom. It's really like they were really interested in what the investigators are doing somehow.
It was fascinating. I mean, going back to the writing on the walls and stuff, the writing and things like that were really quite threatening.
They were
666, die, and sort of stuff that would put you, make you uneasy. And yet I can't remember if there was any EVP that seemed threatening.
No, I think to my knowledge, the majority of the EVPs, like I say, they were more commentary than anything. It's not like they were getting voices coming through saying get out, or threatening things like that, which doesn't tie with the writing on the walls. It's very strange. It sounds like there's an awful lot of different activity going on there.
And there was a mix of obviously sort of the 666 and Christian, things that might upset a Christian, and there was also Native American writing, sort of a pictogram, which I believe was a man soon to die, or a man.
Yeah, it was an
might get
upside down
injured.
man figurine, which was about, a man is going to die or something like that.
So the sort of mixture of Native American and Christian imagery is a bit odd. It's almost as if somebody was thinking, if you're working on a TV show, or if you were like, how can I spook somebody? Like, if you were graffitiing a house, and it's not a case of something that they believe will have any actual sort of spiritual effect. It's more a case of what would look spooky.
I think, basically, like, the ghosts are messing with them. Like, the ghosts, like the spirits and the entities are thinking, like, what's going to freak this guy out? We're not quite sure. We'll try everything.
Yeah. Very, very bizarre. An amazing book. I really suggest that you pop out and read it. I believe it's now available on Amazon to download as well. Absolutely fascinating. Just sort of looking at it at face value, you think, oh my word, how did this guy put up with this? We've lived in an active house.
But not like this.
No, we've suffered from some of the minor stuff that it was in. Like, one of the things that really struck a chord with us was the sound of moving heavy furniture, and then you go upstairs, nothing's moved.
Yeah, we've experienced that.
We lived in a house where one room, and it literally sounded like someone was pulling shelves over and literally sort of taking a baseball bat.
Only to go up and find absolutely nothing out of place.
Yeah, pristine.
But I mean, the floorboards would be shaking with the impact that wasn't happening. So
bizarre. But that sort of thing was also happening to Paul Keith in his house, and also sort of almost shadow figures, the sort of small black
skittery ones.
Yeah, we call them skitterers because they're sort of quick and nip about the house and
scuttle around in the corners.
Yeah, scuttly, skittery fashion. But obviously his progressed to things being set on fire and writing on the walls and.
Yeah, well, we didn't stay in that house that long.
No, he lived there, I think, 4 years in the end, whereas we moved out after 2. So we may have just escaped that, or
possibly
maybe ours just wasn't quite as bad.
So we, highly recommend the book, and you should all read it. But for now, shall we go to our first story of the day? We have lots of good stories for you this episode, and our first one is going to be about a Roman ghost, and this is from a listener in Kettering. It was around 15 years ago that I had my most memorable paranormal experience. We had moved into a fairly unremarkable 1930s semi in the north of Kettering. I remember that we had been there for a few months, and as it was springtime, we decided to start work on the garden, which included digging up 2 large areas of concrete used by the previous owners as hard standing for vehicles. Following a hard day's work on this, an early night followed. I drifted off to sleep easily, but was woken in the early hours. My youngest daughter at the time quite frequently woke and wandered into my bedroom during the night. I was always fully aware of her presence even before seeing her, believing it was a mother's instinct. On this particular occasion, I experienced that exact same feeling on waking, the physical presence of someone next to my bed. I turned onto my other side, fully expecting to see my daughter, only to be confronted by a far taller figure. She was draped in a white robe-type garment, akin to a Roman toga. Her hair was piled up on her head, with curled tendrils around her face. I felt no fear, only fascination. I reached out. I have no idea why. I was expecting to physically feel the cloth of her robe, only to find my hand sweeping through a mist. The figure dissipated, leaving me sitting up in bed, astonished by what I had just experienced. The following day, absolutely fascinated by my experience and with a keen interest in archaeology, I began researching the history of the area. Without revealing my reasons, partly through fear of appearing insane, I spoke to the librarian about archived records for that particular area of Kettering. After very little work, I found articles specifically about the street describing many Roman finds. The most interesting find was a Roman sandal at the bottom of a well. That was the one and only liaison with my Roman friend. Maybe we disturbed some of our predecessors with our digging. Who knows? What an awesome story. Thank you for that, Genevieve from Kettering. That's fantastic. I love the fact that the first thing she did was go and research the history of the area to see if there was any historical link to the phenomena. That's brilliant.
And actually finding that there were Roman settlements in the area and there were finds in her street with actual Roman finds in the area. That's brilliant.
So cool.
The first thing that came to my mind was when you hear these stories of people experiencing something after having just woken up is sort of sleep paralysis. But the fact that she immediately sort of moved and tried to touch it was enough to sort of dispel that.
Well, yeah. I mean, I've had sleep paralysis and you literally, well, it is what it says on the tin. It's paralysis. You cannot move. Maybe your eyeballs and that's about it. So, no, I think that completely dispels that theory. She would not have been able to reach out and touch it if that was the case.
And the fact that it sort of dissipated as well, that seems to be a sort of common
and
theme.
something
and
I've
seen something
experienced.
similar as well. We've both seen something similar.
Yeah.
And the one I saw, I must admit, it looked like a cheap 70s sci-fi TV show effect. And I was just like, oh man, I even if somebody explained this to me, I would, even if it was me explaining it to me, I wouldn't believe it.
No.
But having seen it myself now, you're kind of more willing to accept it from other people. But it is an odd experience.
It is, and there's no real other way of explaining how it looks. It is dispersion. I don't know how to better explain it than that. I don't think it makes sense unless you've seen it yourself. And the other thing is, I think she may have been onto something there with the wondering whether they'd disturbed something by digging up the garden, because that is something you hear a lot when people are doing renovations and work on the house and garden, that it seems to stir up stuff. So maybe I think there may be something in that, definitely. But awesome story. And I think if you're sitting comfortably, I am now going to read you another little story. I'm afraid it's going to be mostly me doing the talking today because, as you can probably tell, poor Fitz here has the standard issue British winter cold and is dying a little bit of man flu.
I'm doing my best. I'm soldiering on.
He is soldiering on. But we have up for you now not just one, but 3 awesome stories from Fizz in Bedford. In 1999, I was working in a new build 6-bedded residential home. The home had only been open a few years, and there had been no deaths in it. I was on a waking night and was doing my observation checks at around 2 a.m. One of the residents had recently been diagnosed with dementia and was very confused as to when it was night and day. His room was halfway down the corridor. I had just finished checking bedroom 2 when I saw a shape, like a man in dark pyjamas, going into the laundry room at the far end of the corridor. There was no other door or window in the laundry room. I legged it down the corridor to encourage the gentleman with dementia back to bed or to see if he wanted to get up and have a cuppa. But there was no one in the laundry room, and it felt much chillier than it should have been. I was the only person on a waking night, and I was terrified. So I said out loud, "Please leave me alone. I'm the only one awake, and I'm scared." And something changed. I have no idea what, but instantly I felt safer. The residential home is still operational today. My next story is about my friend Sean. A few months before my friend's unexpected death, we had had a conversation about life after death and agreed that whoever died first would have to let the other know if there was an afterlife. Sadly, Sean died first, and I was devastated. My friend Kerry came round, and we sat in the garden, drinking tea and chatting about Sean, sharing memories and the like, when suddenly the metal garden table began shaking uncontrollably. It was really strange, and it reminded me of the life after death conversation that I'd had with him. This made me smile, and I said, "Hi, Sean." The table stopped shaking. This happened several evenings whilst I was outside enjoying the summer nights. The night before his funeral, I was woken up by the bedroom light coming on suddenly, and then the immersion heater being switched on. I checked, and my daughter Poppy was asleep. No one else was in the house or had access to the house. I asked Sean to stop, and that was the last I ever heard from him. My last story isn't mine, but that of someone I used to work with. Prior to working with me, she worked with older people and got on very well with one lady. At the start of an early shift, she would always pop into the lady's room and French plait her hair. The lady wouldn't let anyone else do this but her. After a week away, she came into work and went straight to the lady's room. She French plaited her hair and then went down to take handover. But at handover, she was told that the lady had died while she had been on holiday. She swears blind she felt that hair and held it in her fingers. She was so disbelieving of the news that she went back to the lady's room, only to find it stripped, and knowing that it absolutely wasn't like that when she first went in that morning. She opened the window in the room, as she believed that this would let the lady's soul go free. Oh, I love those stories. Thank you, Fizz from Bedford. It really does sound like somebody was trying to reach out and contact you there. So that's pretty incredible. I found it interesting how in both the first two stories, she was obviously quite scared, fair enough, like it would be. And as we hear quite often, just the process of saying out loud, please stop, like, leave me alone. I acknowledge your presence, but you're scaring me, please stop it. And it worked. And we hear that quite a lot.
Yeah, it does seem a lot of the time that they just want to be acknowledged.
Yeah.
And once you've done that, not in every case, obviously. No. But in a lot of cases, if it's just a case of letting you know, I'm here, then just the simple act of saying, thanks for letting me know, but I'd rather get some sleep, thank you.
Please stop now. Yeah, that's fascinating. And the last story, oh my goodness.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. And what really struck me was the fact that it wasn't just that she'd seen the person, but obviously the whole room had changed.
Yeah, and again, something I've heard before. In fact, I've heard stories of people who've actually gone into like roadhouses and they've been busy, bustling places, only to go back another day and it to be obviously like long time abandoned.
Yeah, there's quite a few urban legends like that. I think that the ones I'd heard were sort of like restaurants or B&Bs, like in the south of France or something. People tend to find them on a rainy night and they've got lost and can't find a hotel and there's a beacon of light in the distance and it turns out to be this wonderful place and they have a brilliant time and then they try and find it
and it's not there.
And it's not there.
But this was so real life. I mean, in your workplace, in your work situation, in such an everyday situation, to have that entire room like a time slip, I think.
And it wasn't, it's not the sort of thing where you can think, oh, well, you just saw something slightly different. It's literally, you're plaiting someone's hair.
Yeah.
It's not the sort of thing that you could like seen out of the corner of your eye or that could possibly be mistaken or it was somebody else.
No,
or,
I mean, this is something she was physically involved with.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Very interesting. Or, maybe just that lady wanted to have her hair French plaited one last time and say goodbye. It's quite sad, but quite sweet.
Well, we've got more from our listeners coming up shortly, and thank you very much to everybody that sent in stories so far. We do love hearing them. If you've got a story you'd like to share with us, then please visit our website and navigate yourself to the Send Us Your Stories page, and we'll be glad to have them. Before
our next story, though, we have a brand new little segment for you, Paranormal Postcards.
So, Lil, Paranormal Postcards, brand new segment on the show. What gave you the idea?
Well, really, I'm just kind of reviving a bit of a childhood pastime for a bit of funsies. My parents were not the sort to holiday on the beach in Spain. They liked to traipse around the British countryside and visit the historic locations, which was all, very interesting, and I like a bit of history, still love it now, but not always that interesting for a kid. So I used to like to spice it up a bit by trying to find the ghosts of the area or any castles we visited, things like that. I used to collect those books, like the Ghosts of Cornwall and the Ghosts of Devon and Haunted Heritage, things like that.
I know them well. I used to have a couple of those myself.
Yeah, I've still got some today. I love them. I love those books. So wherever we went, it became sort of a tradition. I'd try and find ghost stories about places we were visiting and buy the book if I could, or use spidey senses to try and search out the ghosts. And my parents got on board in the end. It was quite sweet, really. And when I was older, years later, I went on holiday with them again, and we kind of fell back into the tradition. I can't remember exactly where we were, but I think it was somewhere in Norfolk. It was one of these old like manor houses or something. And my mum was like joking around saying, "Oh, have you found the ghost yet?" And I was like, "Oh no, there's no information about them." But up in the library, it felt a bit weird, but a bit of a strange, brooding atmosphere up there. I reckon if there's a ghost here, it's in the library. So I was quite innocent in what I said, but my mum, bless her, went traipsing off back up to the library and cornered this poor tour guide and thoroughly interrogated him. She was like, "Are there any ghosts here? Is it haunted?" And this poor guy was like, "Well, actually, funnily enough, now you mention it, there is supposed to be a ghost in the library." And then my mum turned around and went, "I know, my daughter just told me." And this poor guy just went white as a sheet. It was hilarious.
Oh, fantastic. It's a real life Scooby Gang.
Yeah, real life Scooby Gang with my mum.
Brilliant. I love the mental image of your mother just like, "Yes, I know, my daughter knows."
She said it like that as well. It was great.
Her spidey senses were tingling.
Yeah, no. So I thought it would be quite fun to revive the tradition and share it with our listeners. So we are going to go and visit some of Britain's haunted heritage, and I started with Leicester Guildhall, which is pretty notoriously haunted, it must be said. Now, Leicester is one of the oldest towns in England, and the Guildhall is Leicester's oldest civic building. I've been to Leicester loads of times, and it's weird because I just never knew this was there. I've never come across it. It's right slap bang in the middle of the city centre, and you're walking down a busy city centre street 1 minute, and then just off to a side street, you suddenly come across this really quite medieval looking building. It does look like something a bit Shakespeare. Well, it is Shakespearean. It looks like something straight out of a Shakespeare play, though. It's like timber framed with, those white sort of walls that bow out and they look a bit warped. It's really cool looking. It was used for theatrical performances over the centuries, actually, and there is a tale, talking of Shakespeare, that Shakespeare did in fact visit and may even have got the idea for King Lear from the local Leicester legend of King Lear, which is spelt differently. It's Leir. That's just a little interesting nugget, but we don't know whether it's true that Shakespeare did visit or not. It's just like a tale that is told, but still quite interesting. So basically, we went into the Guildhall, and there's a little sort of visitor centre come museum there, but I quite enjoyed the fact that you didn't have to be taken on a tour around the building, which I mentioned in the blog. I really hate it when you go to these historic houses and they give you a tour around the building. I don't like that.
Yeah. And we're walking.
Yeah, and we're walking. I hate that. I like, just leave me to explore on my own, okay? But it was fine. It's free as well, although we did give a donation. And for those of you that cannot stand the idea of visiting somewhere like this without a good cream tea, there is a cafe. However, I did not get a chance to sample the state of the scones because it was shut, unfortunately.
Oh dear.
But rest assured, there is tea on hand most of the time. So, the original and oldest part of the building is the Great Hall. Now, this was built around 1390 for the Guild of Corpus Christi, who were a religious group of leading figures within the parish of St Martin's Church. That's now the cathedral next door where Richard III is. The Corpus Christi used the hall as a meeting place and for banquets and feastings. Bear in mind, though, that Great Hall was not the building as we see it today. I mean, we're talking like a basic medieval hall with a beaten earth floor, rushes covering it, and an open hearth with the smoke just rising up to the ceiling. No chimney, none of that. In fact, the hearth is still preserved with bits of pig jaw in it, apparently.
Delightful.
Not sure why. The other wings were added on later, but the original hall still stands. And you can only imagine the things that it's seen in its time, really. And unsurprising, perhaps, that a few lingering spirits remain. One of the things that it's seen is the Siege of Leicester during the Civil War, which brings us to our first ghost. The apparition of a troubled Cavalier soldier has been seen in the Great Hall. And there may be a reason for this, because in May of 1645, the Royalist army lays siege to the parliamentary stronghold that was Leicester. A last stand was made outside the Guildhall by the defenders, but to no avail, and the Royalists desecrated the town and looted the Guildhall. Now, at least 200 Royalist soldiers were killed, outnumbering the 109 lost by the defending army. So you can understand why there might be a Cavalier soldier still roaming the hall, wringing his hands somewhat, perhaps. After the dissolution of the religious guilds during the 1500s, the Guildhall was sold to the Corporation of Leicester, and that's basically the root of what was to become the town council, for the princely sum of £25, 15 shillings and 4pence.
Well, even I could afford that.
I know, if only mortgages were that price today.
I think with inflation, that would probably be considerably more now.
I think possibly you are correct, yes. In 1563, the corporation created the Mayor's Parlour, and that seems to be a particularly active room. There are locked doors flying open by themselves, burglar alarms going off for no apparent reason, and a haunted portrait that seems to manifest a ghostly pair of legs.
Oh, that's interesting.
I know, a bit of an odd one, that.
Do we know if the legs sort of come out of the portrait and down, or
I don't know.
It's like the frame is growing legs?
I'm not sure. I mean, you can check out the picture on the blog. I did find the portrait. It's the Earl of Huntington, and you can check out the picture there, but no ghostly legs. I'm afraid. I'm quite glad I didn't see that. Apparently, it's quite common for visitors to experience an oppressive feel to this room, and I didn't realise that at the time until I was looking back through my notes later, but I've got to say that was my least favourite room in the building.
Spidey senses still working?
Yeah, I was really surprised actually, because I thought at the time, it feels like heavy in here. Didn't really attribute anything to it, but yeah, it was just odd because then I was looking back through my notes and I was like, oh, okay, so that's like a common thing to be reported. There you go. I also figured out while I was there is, if you Google on the tinterwebs, a YouTube video caught on CCTV of Leicester Guildhall with a supposedly paranormal experience, and I'm pretty sure that it was in this Mayor's Parlour. Now, I've watched the video. You've seen it, haven't you?
Yes, you pointed it out to me. We both watched it. My initial thought was that it was like a car headlight or something, but since you were there...
Yeah.
I understand you think that it's not likely or not possible.
I don't think it's possible, to be honest. I really did think the same as you. It is an odd light thing going on. I'm not really sure how to describe it. You'll have to give it a watch. But it does look like your initial thought is that could be passing car headlights because it moves, like the way it moves looks like a car passing. But the windows in that room are only on one wall, and those windows look out directly onto a small courtyard. But the Guildhall is built in like a square with the courtyard in the middle. So those windows are totally blocked from the road. They're completely
shielded. There's no way a car can go past or even just shine through.
No, absolutely none.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was interesting. I wasn't expecting to find that. I was really expecting to sort of see windows out onto the road and go, that's probably what it was. But no, it literally couldn't have been. And I mean, it's not moving like somebody with a torch. I mean, it would be a hell of a big torch anyway to make the kind of light anomaly that it does. But yeah, it made it more interesting, definitely.
Interesting stuff. We'll put a link to that in the description.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, these windows look out onto the small courtyard, and there's even ghostly goings-on reported in the courtyard. It seems no room is safe from the phantom phenomena. Indoors or out. Indoors or out. Witnesses have seen a phantom black dog and cat in the courtyard. And this cat pops up again in more phantom goings-on. It apparently is also seen in the Great Hall, And on the staircase, there's a haunted staircase reported, which I'm pretty sure is the staircase in the hall that in the Great Hall that leads up to the Minstrels Gallery. And this cat is reported to basically trip people up on the stairs.
As cats are wont
As
to do.
cats do. If you have a cat, you'll know this behaviour well. So be warned, even ghost cats will try and kill you on the stairs. And ours do frequently. The Guildhall was home to Leicester's first police force in 1836, and apparently to this day, heavy phantom footsteps are still heard pacing about in the constable's cottage. So layers upon layers of ghostly history really going on in this place. They've still got the jail cells, and you can go down and visit those. They're quite grim and tiny and a bit creepy. It was, like I said, they are quite small, and apparently it was recorded that on one night in 1872, one of those small cells held 17 people at once.
Oh my word.
Just a little historic factoid for you there. But interestingly enough, that night was the last night that the pubs of the town were allowed to stay open all night. So I'm not sure whether that had something to do with it. After that, they closed at 11 p.m. Also in the cells, they've got a rather horrible gibbet on display. Is it gibbet or is it gibbet?
I think it's gibbet.
I think it's gibbet, yeah. But it's basically, because of one of Leicester's more dubious claims to fame, it's a replica of the gibbet used to display the body of convicted murderer James Cook, who was the last man to be gibbeted in England. Now, oddly, I did get a bit of a spidey sense off of that area, which was weird because I knew at the time that it was a replica, not the real thing. So it's not like the item could have been, well, I doubt that the item could have been holding any like weird energy, but perhaps it was just like that area of the cells that was really creepy. It kind of felt a bit horrible there. There is an apparition reported in the cells of a large man dressed in rags, so maybe it was just him lurking in a corner. My favourite room, though, was the library, but then as an ex-librarian, that's probably not surprising. The room was remodelled to house the town library in 1632 and boasts the accolade of being the third oldest public library in the country. Now, in the library, at one end, there's a heavy table, and on display on the table is a King James I Bible. A haunted Bible, nonetheless. Apparently, the staff will regularly close the Bible only to find it open again the next day, and usually to a particular passage. And it's reported that people have actually seen the pages turning by themselves.
Oh wow, they really ought to get some CCTV on there.
Yeah, I know they should, shouldn't they? And people have seen an apparition as well, standing in front of the Bible as if they're reading it. But the reports, well, they vary a little bit. Some people have reported the apparition as that of a monk in robes, and some people have reported it as a grey lady, but still very similar.
Yeah, I think I remember seeing this, and I suppose if they're stood with their back to you reading, all you're going to see is long cloak.
Yeah, grey, long cloak kind of thing. So they do kind of, tally. Yeah, exactly. Now, there was, at the other end of the library, there was this big old mirror. And I can't find any history about this mirror, but my spidey senses were going mental. I don't know what it was about this mirror, but I'm just sure it's got a story, and I can't find anything out about it. So if anybody knows anything about that mirror, please do let me know. And what's even weirder was that I was talking to a friend about this, and I happened to mention this mirror and the fact that I just kept being drawn to it, and I couldn't figure out why. And it turned out that she'd actually visited the Guildhall quite some years previously. The mirror was there, and she had the same experience. She was just drawn to this mirror.
How strange. Although mirrors are sort of featured quite heavily in paranormal.
Yeah.
I know some cultures were sort of they were thought to trap your soul. And even in Britain, they used to, when you have bodies laid out in houses, you'd cover the mirrors.
Yeah.
To make sure that the soul didn't get trapped
in
the mirror prior to being buried. So it's a common theme. So I wouldn't be surprised if some things happened there over the years that sort of happened in front of the mirror. It could even be modern.
Yeah. What, a modern occurrence, you mean? Yeah. No, that's a good point, actually. I didn't even think of that. Perhaps it's not history, like really far back history that we were actually looking for. Yeah, I don't know, but there was just something about it. So, if anybody can tell me anything more about the Mera, or if you've had any experiences yourself that are similar, do let us know, because it's really interesting. So yeah, that was basically the Guildhall, but there's kind of a historical kind of route through that part of Leicester. So I did explore a little bit more. I stopped by the St Mary de Castro church in the Castle Mound, but I was really heading for the 14th century turret gateway. It's widely known as Rupert's Gate, and originally separated the New Walk religious precinct from Leicester Castle, and you can still see the grooves where the portcullis was, which is quite interesting. It's supposedly haunted by the ghost of Mary de Bohun, who was the first wife of Henry V. But scarier than that, it is a favourite haunt of Black Annis.
She sounds delightful.
I know, right? A terrifying mythological creature with long talons and hung about the waist with human skins.
Oh, lovely.
I thought I'd work a bit of myths and legends into the story, and it's a goodie. The legend of Black Annis goes that she lived in a cave in the Dane Hills in Leicester, that she clawed out of the rock with her talons. She would crouch in an oak tree at the cave's entrance, ready to drop down on her victims and carry them off to her cave to drink their blood, fillet their skin using her claws, and eat their flesh.
Nice. I'm guessing that some medieval parent who wanted their child to come home on time was like, yeah, if you stay out too late, Black Annis will eat you.
That's pretty, yeah, it's funny. That's basically how the legend goes, that she's become like this creature of, nightmares that parents threaten their children with if they're out after dark. But she was a thrifty gal. No part of the beast wasted on all that, with those flayed skins. She didn't waste them. No, she dried the skins of her victims in the oak tree, then sewed them into a rather fetching skirt she could wear.
Oh, lovely.
I know. It's possible that some of the more descriptive elements of the legend come from a Leicestershire poet, John Haywick Jr., who wrote of her, "Vast talons foul with human flesh there grew in place of hands, and features livid blue glared in her visage, while the obscene waist warm skins of human victims close embraced." It's delightful, isn't it?
Yes.
So these days, she is said to hang under the turret gateway, waiting to drop onto unsuspecting children. And I think that's probably because, unfortunately, her cave is now underneath the Dane Hill housing estate. So she had to move somewhere, didn't she?
Oh, well, obviously.
But not really the place to hang out at night. And apparently the locals tend to avoid that area after dark, which is fairly understandable. There are many theories with regards to the origins of Black Annis legend, and it's quite fascinating. Some people think its origins lie in the far older Celtic goddess of Danu, and that the pagan legend was probably demonised later. So there we have it, our first paranormal postcard.
Very interesting, and there's more detail on the website. Lil's written a quite in-depth blog with lots of pictures.
I have indeed, and as far as pictures are concerned, if you want to see some more pictures, you should be watching this on the YouTubes, where there should be a lovely slideshow happening in front of your eyes right now.
Speaking of pictures,
yes,
I remember when you came back from your visit, we were reviewing your pictures.
Oh, yeah.
And there was one that appeared, and we've put it on the blog.
We have. Yeah, it's up there. You can look at it.
I think it's one of the last pictures on the blog, but there was some green sort of blobs.
Yeah, basically what happened was, the Guildhall was quite quiet when I visited, really, but I couldn't resist popping back in on the way back to the train station because it was closing time and I thought it would be empty, and it was brilliant. I had the whole place to myself. I could really feel like the eerie kind of settling as the place got quieter because there was nobody there. It was brilliant. And I took a photo from the top of the staircase next to the Minstrels Gallery down into the Great Hall. And basically what's come out on the photo, it looks like almost green ectoplasmic footprints along the floor. Oh my God, we were so excited. I was like, I can't guess. It's brilliant.
Yeah, we both looked at it on this little camera screen and we're like, oh wow, that's really, what's that?
Yeah.
Oh, that's really exciting. And plugged it into the computer and put it on the big screen. and running through the pictures, and we found a similar effect.
Yeah, it's
on another picture.
Unfortunately, we've kind of debunked it. I think it is a bit of a weird light effect, though, still, isn't it? But I think it's where the electric has got like a electric candelabra, and I think it's where the electric light is coming down and hitting the natural light from a window at just a certain angle, and it's creating like a shadow of the electric lights. I'm not
sure. I'm no camera expert, but it's obviously, once you zoom out and look at it on a big screen, you can see that the lights are in the same pattern
as the candelabra.
Yeah. And on this, it's even more obvious on one of the other photos that we didn't put up, which debunked it in the first place. But we were so excited. We thought we've got something really interesting here. We don't know what that is, and then managed to debunk it.
It's so disappointing.
Reason prevails.
However, that's not very exciting. It was very disappointing, but the visit itself was awesome, and I would highly recommend a visit to the Guildhall. And there were loads of other historical places in Leicester that I would love to visit, and I just didn't get time. So if you have any experiences of other haunted places in Leicester, do let us know and send us your own paranormal postcards.
Yes, if you've got a local legend or interesting site in your area, then do send us a paranormal postcard and maybe we'll visit you next time. Well, that was certainly interesting, and leading on from that, we're going to go back into something that's becoming a bit of a common theme on the podcast, a haunted pub.
When my friends moved back to the UK, they decided to buy a Grade 2 listed pub dating from 1733 in a historical village in Lincolnshire, near where King John of England's crown jewels and other valuable crown possessions were lost in marshland. The pub was going to be a music venue and needed a total transformation. It was uninhabited and completely run down. My partner and I were invited over to spend the night there with them during the refurbishment so that we could see the progress. The inside had not been changed much. Listed buildings regulations extend inside as well, and progressive additions over time have to be kept unaltered, so the fabric of the building is unchanged. The friends were living in one room and a bedroom beside it upstairs while the renovation was underway, and had made another room comfortable for guests. We all sat in the makeshift living room, drinking wine and chatting. As there was no furniture, apart from deck chairs, I put my glass of wine on the huge windowsill. The sill was incredibly deep, possibly 2 feet or more, as they were in that age of building, but I still placed my glass as close to the window as possible, so there was no chance of it getting knocked over. It had only stood there for a minute or so, when it flew off the windowsill and smashed on the floor between all our feet. We were horrified. The glass didn't tip or fall. It moved sideways, whilst upright, across the very level windowsill, a few feet into the room, before landing in the middle of the 4 of us. If it had tipped, it would have spilled the wine on the sill and onto the floor below, not a few feet into the room. Although it was unusual, we didn't think too much of it, apart from wondering how on earth it could have happened without a reason, as we all saw where it was placed and the way it moved. At bedtime, my friend went off to bed. Then we heard a loud noise and my friend shouting loudly. We all dashed into the bedroom to see what had happened, only to find him pinned between the bed and a huge mirror, which had been propped at a secure angle against the bedroom wall for weeks. It hadn't slipped from the base. It had fallen over as though top-heavy. But to do this, it would have had to overcome gravity and become upright before toppling. He didn't pull it over or knock into it. It fell as he walked past, just as he had done every night for many weeks. My friend was shouting, but he wasn't shouting for help to be freed. He was shouting aggressively at someone, calling them evil and to get out of his pub, and that he didn't like their face. He never did discuss who he saw. Months later, When the pub was open, the friends found the cellar very spooky and went in there as little as possible, even before they were told by locals there was a superstition that the cellar was haunted. I recently found out that the pub is reputed to be haunted by 5 ghosts, including the former landlord. I would like to find out which landlord it's supposed to be.
And thanks to Jan in Northamptonshire for that story. It was interesting, again, that it seemed to feature somewhere that was being renovated.
I know, it comes up so often, doesn't it? That it's
a very common theme.
Very much so, that the building work and disturbing the building and all the work that they're doing is like stirring up spirits, essentially.
Having worked in a bar, I know for a fact that a little bit of water on the bottom of a glass can make it sort of creep across a flat surface.
I've seen that. It kind of goes skidding along a bit.
Yeah, it looks a bit odd. It does look like somebody's gently pushing it.
It does.
But I am yet to experience one being flung off a 2-foot wide surface into the middle of a room.
I don't think this was that.
No, certainly doesn't seem to be. But that was my first thought when I started hearing the story, was that I think I might know what that is. But no, having it lifted off and flung into the room, definitely not.
No, the water underneath the glass would not create that much force. Definitely not. I really want to know, like, who is he shouting at so aggressively?
It was odd that it wasn't sort of, help get this mirror off me. It was, angry. And I love the ad hoc insult, I hate your face.
The heat of the moment insult that is. Yeah, brilliant. Well, I think, it seems obvious to me. He saw something, didn't he?
Yeah, that it wasn't just like, oh, this mirror has fallen on me. It was, somebody has pushed this mirror on me.
I know. I'd be fascinated to hear what he saw.
Well, he obviously didn't want to talk about it.
No. Fair enough. It sounds like the locals might have known something about the haunting as well.
Yeah, they're obviously saying there's quite a few ghosts in there, but it'd be interesting to get some more details from them.
Definitely fascinating place. Well, unfortunately, that was the last story of this episode, and that does bring us to the end, but we do hope you enjoyed it, and thank you so much to everybody that sent in a story this time.
We do love hearing your stories, and we would love to keep the conversation going, which you can do by joining us at Facebook. You can find us on Twitter. We're on Instagram if you want to see any interesting photos that we take while we're out and about. We also have a Tumblr, pretty much any social media platform.
All the social media platforms.
All the social medias. If you search for Knock Once for Yes, you'll find us eventually.
Please do get in touch and possibly even send us your own paranormal postcard. See you next time.
EVP session end.